Wife left me with a text message. I'm going on vacation with lover. Bye, loser. I withdrew money from the joint account and said bye. Then she came back, but it too late. Have you ever had one of those moments when your whole world collapses in an instant? That was me the day I got Stacy's text. It wasn't even subtle. Just 8 words, like a bullet to the chest. I'm going on vacation with my lover. Bye, loser. I stared at my phone, blinking as if I'd misread it. I even closed and reopened the message, hoping it would change. Nope. Same cold words. At first I thought it must be some kind of joke, maybe she'd sent it to the wrong person. But deep down I knew. It wasn't a mistake. I was in Europe at the time, working on one of those long-term contracts I had to take a few times a year. Months away from home, living out of suitcases, while Stacy and our son stayed back in the States. I did it for them. Every paycheck I earned went straight to making sure they were taken care of. I sent her $5,000 every month, enough to cover all the bills and then some. And whenever she asked for more, I'd send it without question. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought we had a real partnership. Turns out I was nothing more than an ATM to her. In retrospect, the signs were everywhere. I just didn't want to see them. My mom had warned me from the beginning. She never liked Stacy very much. Not that she was rude about it, but you know how mothers have that sixth sense. She pulled me aside more than once and said things like, "Tom, she's not right for you. You two are too different. You need someone loyal." I didn't want to hear it. I thought my mom was just being overly protective, the way moms are sometimes. But she wasn't the only one. My friends were coming to me with stories, too. "Hey man, I saw Stacy at the bar last night with some guy." Or, "She's been going to a lot of parties while you've been gone." They weren't trying to create drama, they were trying to help. But I brushed them off. I didn't want to believe it. Whenever I confronted Stacy, she always had a way of turning the situation around. "You're jealous," she'd say. "You can't stand to see us happy." And God, I ate it up. Every time. I mean, when I came home between work trips, everything seemed fine. Stacy was affectionate, even loving. We were spending time with our son. It felt normal. I told myself that everyone else was just stirring up trouble. But the people who saw the truth the most? My parents. You see, while I was overseas, Stacy and our son lived with my parents. And they weren't shy about telling me what was going on. My mom told me that Stacy would go out a lot and leave my son with them for hours. Sometimes she'd come home late at night, all dressed up like she was going to a club. My dad even noticed, but he was a little more reserved. He'd just tell me, "Son, maybe you should open your eyes a little bit." But no, I stayed in denial. I didn't want to admit that I might have married someone who didn't care about me. Hell, I loved her. I thought she was my forever. Then came the text. "Bye, loser." I can't even describe how that felt. Like someone took a sledgehammer to my stomach. And after the shock wore off, all that was left was anger. I'd spent years busting my ass for this woman, and she threw it away like it was nothing. She didn't even have the decency to tell me in person. Just a text message. I finally texted her back. "Okay, bye. But now kiss your money goodbye." She replied almost immediately. "No, wait. Let's talk about it. Don't do anything rash." Rash? Are you kidding me? I wasn't the one sleeping around while my spouse worked overseas. I wasn't going to sit around and let her call the shots anymore. I called the bank, withdrew $20,000 from our joint account, and then called my mother. I asked her to find any savings Stacy might have stashed away and secure them. It was time to cut her off completely. And I didn't feel guilty. Not one bit. She deserved every ounce of what was coming to her. Once the money was settled, I booked the next flight home. I wasn't going to let this drag on. I had to face it head on, apologize to my mother for being such a blind idiot, and finally put an end to my marriage. Stacy had made her decision. Now it was time for me to make mine. The next day, I was on a red-eye flight back to the States. I didn't sleep at all. My mind was racing with all the things I was going to do when I got there. I imagined going into the house, catching Stacy off guard, maybe even throwing her stuff out on the lawn. I wasn't the kind of guy who usually did things like that, but this wasn't normal. This was personal. When I landed, I went straight to my parents' house. I walked in and my mother was waiting for me in the kitchen. She didn't say "I told you so," but the look on her face said it all. I apologized right then and there. Told her I should have listened to her all along. She just nodded and said, "I'm glad you're finally seeing things clearly." But here's where things took a turn. As I was sitting there talking to my mom, my dad came in from outside. He had this serious look on his face. "Tom, you're not going to like this," he said. "What now?" I asked. "Remember that guy Ethan from high school? The one Stacy used to hang out with?" I vaguely remembered Ethan, tall, blonde, kind of a troublemaker back then. "Yeah, why?" My dad sighed. "Apparently she's been seeing him for months. He's the guy she went on that vacation with." I froze. "Ethan? Are you kidding me?" The guy was a loser then, and probably still is now. I guess Stacy had a guy after all. But here's the kicker, my dad wasn't done. He's also been bragging around town about how he's going to marry Stacy after the divorce and take you for all you've got. Excuse me? I almost laughed at the absurdity of it all. He's planning on what? Yes. Word travels fast in a town like this. He talks like he's about to cash in on your life's work. That was all I needed to hear. It wasn't just Stacy anymore. Now I had this two-bit con man trying to lay claim to my hard-earned money over my dead body. I told my parents to sit tight. I drove over to the bank to make sure everything was locked up. No chance for Stacy to pull any legal tricks. I also filed the paperwork to freeze our accounts and start the divorce process. Later that day, I was in for another surprise. While I was at the courthouse filling out the paperwork, I ran into an old friend, Mike. He'd known Stacy and me since high school. He pulled me aside and looked worried. "Hey man, I heard about what happened with Stacy." "Yeah," I muttered. "She's a piece of work, isn't she?" Mike looked around as if he didn't want anyone else to overhear. "Listen, there's something you should know. Stacy's been seeing more than just Ethan." "What do you mean?" "She's been seeing a couple other guys. One of them is married. And his wife found out." I blinked. "Wait, what? When did this happen?" "The last few months. It's all coming out now that people know you're back in town." I didn't know whether to laugh or be completely horrified. How deep was this betrayal? How many lies had she told? It was as if every time I thought I had the whole story, another layer was peeled back, revealing more dirt. By the time I got back to my parents' house, my phone was exploding with messages. Stacy must have heard I was in town, because she was suddenly very eager to talk. "Tom, let's meet. We can work this out." "Please." "Work this out?" "Yeah, sure." The only thing I wanted to work out was how fast I could get her out of my life. But I decided to let her come back anyway. Not because I wanted to make up, but because I wanted her to see what she had lost. I wanted her to walk into that house and face me, my parents, and the reality of what she'd done. She showed up 5 days later, strutting in as if she hadn't just blown up our entire marriage. But the moment she saw me standing there with my parents, her confidence cracked. I didn't even raise my voice. I just told her, "It's over, Stacy. You're done here." I expected her to cry, to beg, to make some dramatic scene. But instead, she just folded her arms and said, "Fine. But don't take all the money." I smiled. "Oh, I already did." Her face paled. "Wait, what?" "Yes, Stacy. The accounts are empty. You won't get a dime from me. Good luck with Ethan. Maybe he'll support you now." She lost it. She started screaming about how I had no right, how I was being unfair. My dad, who'd been quiet until then, finally spoke up. "You need to get out of here, girl. You're not welcome in this house anymore." She snapped at him, but it didn't matter. She knew she had no choice. Then, just when I thought things couldn't get any more surreal, she dropped another bomb. "You can keep the baby," she said. "I'm done with this whole family life. I want to be free." My mother gasped. "Excuse me? You're giving up your own son?" Stacy shrugged like it was no big deal. "I need to find myself. I can't be tied down anymore." And with that, she grabbed her bags and walked out the door without looking back. After Stacy walked out that door, leaving her own son behind like a piece of luggage, I stood there in stunned silence. My mother, however, wasn't so quiet. She muttered under her breath, "Good riddance." My father didn't say much either. He just shook his head, grabbed a beer, and walked out into the backyard. That was his way of dealing with stress. Sit outside, drink a beer, and let it all sink in. Meanwhile, I felt like I had been thrown into a soap opera. I mean, who does that? Just casually abandon your kid and walk out of a marriage like it's no big deal? My head was still spinning when I heard my son's footsteps upstairs. He was only 5, and fortunately too young to understand all the chaos that had just happened. I didn't want him to see me like this, angry, confused, and embarrassed, so I took a deep breath and went to check on him. He was playing with his action figures as if nothing had happened. "Hey, buddy," I said, trying to sound normal. "Are you hungry? Grandma's making dinner soon." "Yeah," he chirped, completely unfazed. I envied his innocence. For the rest of the evening, I focused on him, pretending that everything was fine. But deep down, I knew I had to get my act together, and fast. Stacy was gone, and I had to figure out what life was going to be like now for both of us. The next morning, I got a call from my attorney. "Tom, we have a problem," he said right off the bat. "Great," I sighed. "What now?" "Stacy has already contacted a lawyer. She's claiming that you emptied the joint account illegally. She's threatening to file a lawsuit if you don't give back at least half the money." I almost laughed. "Illegally?" "She left me a message saying she was going on vacation with her lover." "Doesn't that count for something?" "Unfortunately, it's not that simple. She can claim abandonment, but unless you have proof that she was unfaithful and misused funds, she might have a case." Proof. That word stuck in my head. Proof. I had to stop playing defense and start building my case. That's when it hit me, Ethan and the others. Everyone in town knew what Stacy was up to. People had seen her with Ethan, at clubs, at parties, sneaking around. And Mike had mentioned other guys too. If I could get witnesses to back me up, I'd have all the proof I needed to shut her down legally and protect myself financially. That afternoon, I decided to pay Mike a visit. He lived a few blocks away, so I drove over and knocked on his door. When he opened it, he gave me a look like he'd been expecting me. "Tom, man. Are you okay?" "Not really," I admitted. "But I need your help. You said Stacy was seeing other guys besides Ethan. I need names, dates, anything you've got." Mike scratched the back of his head and hesitated. "Look, I don't want to get in the middle of this mess, but yeah, there are things that people have seen. I can talk to some people and see if they're willing to go on the record." "Thanks. I really need this, Mike. She's trying to take me to court for money she doesn't deserve." He nodded. "I get it. You don't deserve that crap." We talked for a while, and before I left, Mike dropped another surprise on me. "Hey, just a heads up. Ethan's been telling people that Stacy's planning on coming after you hard. Apparently he thinks he's got the upper hand because she's going to get custody of your kid if things get ugly." I froze. "What?" "She doesn't even want him. She just said she's done with family life." "Yeah, well, she might change her mind if it means getting more money in court. Ethan's probably pushing her to do that." That lit a fire in me. Stacy could try whatever she wanted, but there was no way I was going to let her take my son just to milk me for more money. I had to get ahead of this and fast. Later that night, I sat down with my mom and dad to discuss the situation. My dad, in his usual laid-back way, said, "Don't let her scare you, son. She doesn't have a leg to stand on. You've been supporting her for years while she's been running around behind your back. Courts aren't stupid. Still, I said, I have to cover all my bases. If she comes after me, I need to be ready. My mom chimed in. You have the truth on your side, Tom. And this town is too small for her lies to stand up. People know what she's done. They just need to get the facts. She was right. The next few days were a whirlwind of meetings, phone calls, and conversations. Mike came through with a couple of friends who were willing to testify about Stacy's infidelity. One of them even had photos from a party where Stacy was making out with Ethan in front of everyone. On top of that, I found out that Stacy had been borrowing money from people all over town, money that she hadn't paid back. It seemed like every new piece of information painted her as more reckless and irresponsible than I'd ever imagined. But the biggest twist came a week later. I got a call from Stacy's attorney. Apparently, Stacy had completely backed down from her custody threat. She knew she didn't have a chance. But the lawyer hinted that she had a new plan. She wanted to settle everything out of court on her terms. What were those terms? I was about to find out. A few days after I heard that Stacy wanted to settle, I got a phone call directly from her. I almost didn't answer it, but curiosity got the better of me. She wasted no time with pleasantries. Tom, we have to stop this nonsense, she said. Let's be adults and work out an agreement. You can't keep all the money. We were married. I'm entitled to some. I laughed bitterly. You're entitled? You texted me that you were leaving me for your lover and went on vacation with him. You left our son behind like a piece of luggage. Now you want me to just hand over cash like none of this happened? Her voice grew cold. It's called divorce, Tom. I could take you to court and it would get ugly. For both of us. Go ahead, I shot back. You'd lose. I have witnesses, evidence, and the truth. Do you really want to air your dirty laundry in front of everyone? There was a pause from her. She hadn't expected me to be so prepared. Finally she muttered, I don't want a fight. I just want what's fair. You had your chance to be fair. Now you get nothing. We're done here. I hung up and blocked her number. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt in control. The next morning, I met with my attorney to finalize our case strategy. We filed for full custody of my son and made sure Stacy had no legal claim to any more money. She didn't even have a job, and I wasn't going to let her live off me forever. A week later, things escalated when Stacy and her boyfriend, Ethan, tried one last desperate stunt. Ethan showed up at my parents' house and banged on the door. I wasn't home at the time, but my dad was. From what he told me later, Ethan was screaming nonsense about how Tom can't win, and we're going to take him to court. My dad didn't flinch. He opened the door, looked Ethan dead in the eye, and said, You come back here, and you'll regret it. Then he calmly slammed the door in his face. Ethan didn't try anything after that. I guess he realized his little intimidation game wasn't going to work. After that, things started moving quickly. Stacy must have realized that the walls were closing in on her because she didn't put up much of a fight when the divorce papers were served. She didn't fight for full custody either. She just signed the papers as if she wanted to get it over with as quickly as possible. When I talked to my lawyer after the settlement was finalized, he was as surprised as I was. She could have dragged this out longer, he said. But I guess she knew she didn't stand a chance. Good. I was done with her games. I made sure everything was in writing: no alimony, no claims on future earnings. Stacy was officially out of our lives. A few weeks later, I heard through the grapevine that Stacy and Ethan had broken up. Apparently, things had gone south between them when the money dried up. She wasn't living in some fantasy anymore. She was back in reality, broke and scrambling to get by. Part of me thought she'd come crawling back, trying to rekindle something. But she didn't. Not even once. I guess she knew there was no point. I was done, and she had burned every bridge she could think of. My focus shifted completely to my son. I wanted to give him the stability and happiness he deserved. I quit my overseas job and found work closer to home. My parents helped out a lot, and for the first time in years, I felt grounded. One night, as I was tucking my son into bed, he looked up at me and said, "Daddy, are we going to be okay now?" I smiled and stroked his hair. "Yeah, buddy. We're going to be okay." And we were. A few months after the dust settled, I thought I'd heard the last of Stacy. I didn't keep track of her, and honestly, I didn't care where she ended up. But of course, life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect it. I was at the grocery store when I ran into Jenny, one of Stacy's old friends. We hadn't talked much before, but now she seemed eager to share some gossip. "Hey, Tom! I hear you're doing great with your kid." "That's great," she started, then leaned in like she was about to drop some juicy news. "Did you hear about Stacy?" I raised an eyebrow. "No, I haven't." "What about her?" Jenny snorted. "She's living with some guy now. Some Mexican guy she met a few weeks after Ethan dumped her. Apparently they're crashing in some rundown apartment across town." I couldn't help but chuckle. "Really? Well, I guess she's still finding herself, huh?" "Yeah," Jenny grinned. "But here's the kicker, she's been asking people for money. She told me she's struggling and may have to leave town soon. Oh, and she mentioned you. She said she was going to try to ask you for help." "Good luck with that," I said, shaking my head. Sure enough, a week later I got an email from Stacy. I hadn't blocked her, although I probably should have. It was a long, rambling message about how things hadn't worked out with Ethan and how she was now living with a guy named Manuel. She claimed she was trying to turn her life around but needed some temporary financial assistance. She said it would help her get back on her feet and implied that it was the least I could do since we shared a history. I didn't respond. I didn't even think about it. A few days later, my mother called me. "Guess who called me today?" she said, clearly amused. "Let me guess, Stacy." Bingo. She's got some nerve. She asked if I could loan her a few $1,000s to support her new life. I told her, "Honey, you made your choices. Now you live with them." She didn't take it well. "Good," I said. "She doesn't deserve any sympathy." From then on, Stacy was just a name in my past. She had no power over me, my family, or my son. We had everything: stability, happiness, and peace. My boy was thriving, surrounded by love and support. We'd built a life without her, and it was better than anything I could have imagined during those dark days. As for Stacy, word around town was that she had moved out of state not long after her attempts to beg for money failed. Last I heard, Manuel had left her too. But that wasn't my problem anymore. She was just a chapter of my life that I had finally closed. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Really free.